Chapter 122. Time. Summary. Their ship is broken, and they're stranded in space. Air is limited. Light is limited. Energy is limited. Time is limited. And they're running out of all of it. It didn't take more than a glance at the gravity generator to know that it was unaligned to hell and back. Not that it mattered much, Izuku thought. Who cares if panels floated listlessly around the body of the ship as he, Mei, and Denki scoured the innards of the ship for anything that might change the silent promise looming on the horizon? Well, good news is, Denki said, Izuku looking up to see him with his head in the floor. The oxygen generator is basically okay. Like, it's definitely more crooked than it was before, and the electrodes got tugged off, but tape those back in place and get some electricity flowing through the system, and we'll be able to keep breathing. Except we don't have any power, Izuku sighed, trying not to let the weariness he felt slip too much into his voice. The least screwed up electromagnets are the one in the nav system, and they're still pretty messed up. And even if those were working, the engine looks like a toddler smashed it on the ground after putting it in the microwave.
I might be able to get things running enough to power a few things,
Mei mused.
But it would take almost a full day. And with all of us in here, plus Beatrice, we'd die from CO2 toxicity before I was done. Probably even with the suits.
You're not sugarcoating it much, are you? Kachan stated, not upset or scolding. Mina didn't lift her head from where it lay against Kachan's chest.
Not much point in doing that.
Izuku didn't like the detached tone she said it with.
Keeping secrets about what's going on wouldn't be good,
Ochako agreed, snuggling closer to the pinkette in the nest of floating blankets.
But it's not like we haven't faced stakes like these before. We can't let it get us too down.
She tried for a smile. Sure, they'd faced plenty of situations where Izuku thought they might die. But that feeling didn't tend to stretch more than a few hours into the future at most, because most of those times, the possible death was coming from someone attacking them. Most fights didn't last very long, fueled by adrenaline and action. If it was over, it was over. The silence that was creeping around the edges of conversation, and the hanging threat of slowly running out of oxygen in space, was not the same.
What about the plants?
Ochako asked after a moment, reaching out to grab the pink and green plant drifting by.
They'll help, but I don't think they'll be fast enough.
Mei frowned, but there was something about the way she said it. With the way she was half tucked into the floor, it was a little difficult to see her face, but as Izuku let himself float up slightly, he could make out an expression he recognized. Unlike the quiet, grim anxiety that had settled over everyone else, Mei's shoulders were set back, eyes darting around the mechanical guts of the ship, face blank with concentration. Their situation definitely seemed, well, fucked. But Mei wasn't let that going to stop her, and he wouldn't let it stop them either. There had to be a way. They were not about to die floating around in space. I could power it. There was hesitance when Denki spoke, but it most certainly wasn't a question. Until you fix the engine. I could keep the oxygen going until you're done. No. Kachan's response was quick and firm. Did you not hear her, dipshit? It'd take a day. 24 hours. Your quirk is still not all there from the fight. You could fuck yourself up trying to pull this off. It wouldn't have to be for the whole time. Just long enough that Mei and Izuku could fix it before we passed out, That might work. If they could get the generator working on its own, it would buy them time. Time to see if they could fix the ship enough to get it moving. Time to reach out to the guild for help. It could be just what they needed. But Kachan's right about that, Denki. You know, if you push yourself too far, it could have some serious consequences on your body. Izuku looked into Denki's eyes as he said it. He needed to know the electric blonde understood. Denki nodded, eyes locked on him. I know. I don't like it, but I definitely like it more than the other option. Ochako chuckled sadly.
Can't argue with you there.
Denki jumped a little when Mei put a hand on his shoulder.
We'll be as fast as we can,
she said with a rare seriousness. I know you will be, Denki replied with a smile. It wasn't a bright smile, but Izuku felt like he meant what he said. Fine, Kachan agreed. But you're going to do this as safely as possible. You wait until the oxygen levels go down, then you start. And if it gets back to normal levels, you stop and rest. Got it? Yes, sir, Denki replied with a lazy salute. Okay, they had a plan. They could do this. Izuku trusted Mei to walk him through this, and Denki trusted them both to get it done. They weren't safe yet, but they might be. Kachan huffed. That's yes, sir, great explosion murder god dynamite to you. Katsuki watched as the 3 tech squad gremlins got to work. He watched from the floating cocoon of blankets he had been roped into joining as Denki fixed the oxygen generator, yellow eyes darting to the little dial on the machine that displayed the oxygen levels. Katsuki couldn't see what it said. He could only trust that when yellow bolts flickered around his hands, a faint yellow glow coming to life on his costume, Denki was following Katsuki's words. Every hour or so, Denki's quirk would spark to life, just as Katsuki's breath started to feel shallow. He'd coax Beatrice into an old prototype helmet of Deku's that Ochako had scrounged up, and keep the insect comfortable while breathing slowly got easier. The bug was from a more oxygen-rich atmosphere than them, as Mina had pointed out. He'd ignored the twinge of pain in his right wrist when he closed the helmet or grabbed it when it started to float away. It was his fault anyway. He'd been too slow grabbing the stupid bee so it didn't pinball around the ship. And getting Mina from the blanket black hole to safety buckled up, and dragging Mei to her seat when she'd been too focused on her shield. He'd had to grab on pretty fucking hard when the Suns had flash-bombed their ship and sent it spinning. It hurt like a bitch, but he'd been able to clasp the harness into place before it really got going. I feel so useless sitting here, Ochako quietly grumbled into her bear plushie, the sounds of the others working just about concealing her voice from them.
I get what you mean,
Mina sighed.
They're working really hard to get the ship working, and we're just floating on the ceiling.
You'd be floating on the ceiling anyway, Katsuki pointed out. If he had anything to say about it, Mina would be away from any action or life-ending stakes for a while. As evident by the current life-ending stakes, he did not. Mina flinched slightly at the reminder.
That's not what
She took a breath. But Ochako spoke first, falling back into a soft tone.
No, yeah. It's not just this time. Back on Oxyos, we were sitting there while they were fixing the ship. When there's anything tech-related, they're the only ones doing anything to fix it.
Her shoulders fell.
I wish we were able to do something.
Katsuki scoffed. Don't be stupid. Do you know how much time they spent learning that bullshit? A fucking lot. The nerd was muttering science crap in his sleep for months. Are you saying you've got the time and patience to learn futuristic alien rocket science? Mina's reply was half-hearted.
It's just...
It's not just anything. We're a team, remember? You think they can pull off all the dumb shit we do? No, they'd die. Stop wasting oxygen with your being dumb. You two are fucking great. Deal with it. Ochako giggled.
A patented Katsuki Bakugo pep talk. Nothing like 'em.
Mina giggled back. Katsuki made a show of scoffing before they settled back into the quiet drone of the others working, the air lighter than before. When he looked over at Deku, who was tediously unpretzelifying some coppery-looking wire, he had to push down his own feeling of inadequacy. He did his best to throw aside their feelings of being useless right now, brash and certain as he often was, but he was feeling the same thing. Just because everything he told them about why feeling shitty about it was dumb was true, doesn't mean he believes it. The idea of just sitting here for who knows how long, all while Denki pushed his quirk and Deku and Mei worked for hours nonstop to keep them alive, made his skin crawl, made him want to punch something. But this wasn't a situation he could punch or explode away. Tech like this wasn't his thing, had never been. So unless he wanted to give up hours of potential training time for months to even attempt to wrap his head around that shit, he had to deal with it. And he would. He just didn't have to like it.